This video contains spoilers for the Jurassic Park and World series, especially Jurassic World Rebirth. I watched Jurassic World Rebirth in cinemas, and I quite enjoyed it. Well, mostly. I thought it was a good movie, but it's definitely quite flawed. But that said, I do want to discuss the things I didn't like about this film, as well as the stuff I did like. Let's start by discussing the stars of this series. The dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures brought back from extinction. Mosasaurus, so far the only marine reptile featured in the series, returns in this film, and as in the previous movies, its scenes were pretty good. It proved itself to be quite a threat in the water, perhaps even more so than in previous films, as for once it's actually going after important characters. It attacks the boat that this family is on, which is what ends up drawing them into the plot, and it was quite a good intense scene. Later it attacks the boat that the mercenaries are on as they attempt to get its blood. More on that later. They also bring back Spinosaurus, although this time with a more updated design, and they have the Spinosaurus hunt alongside the Mosasaur in the water, helping her to find and hunt prey. The Spinosaurs also attack the boat and end up killing a couple people in the process, and I must say it was nice to see this species return to the film series. The next dinosaur prominently featured would be the Titanosaurus, a sauropod species that debuts in this film. I don't have a lot to say about this one. As usual with the sauropods, its main role in the film is to display the majesty and wonder of the dinosaurs. It only really appears in one scene and it doesn't do much. Aquilops is another new species introduced in this film, though I must admit when I saw it in the cinema I thought it was a Microceratus. But no, this dinosaur is a different species. The one shown in this film was named Dolores, and it ended up becoming attached to the young girl in this movie after she fed it. And she actually takes Dolores off the island in the end, so a free pet I guess. This species was cute and I liked its inclusion. Quetzalcoatlus had a bigger role in this film compared to Dominion. The mercenaries steal DNA from one of their eggs, and the mother comes back to the nest to catch them in the act, so obviously then tries to kill them. And this was a pretty decent scene. I love that they have a scene taking place on a cliffside. It really adds to the uniqueness and tension of the scene. There's also a new species brought into this film, a Tyrannosaurus that has the ability to teleport. Okay, so this is a silly moment, but in all seriousness, T-Rex returns in this film. And for the first time, a Jurassic World movie actually used the T-Rex properly. It appeared in a scene where the family tries to get a boat so they can head down the river, and there's this really tense build-up as the older daughter heads to where the boat is being kept, only to realise there's a sleeping Rex right there, before having to quietly drag the boat past the Rex. After waking the Rex, the family attempts to flee on the boat, and the Rex chases them through the river, knocking them off the boat and attempting to eat them. I really liked this scene a lot. The Rex was shown to be quite intelligent here, knocking the family off the boat and into the water, before it immediately beelined further downstream so it can intercept them as they drag through the rapids. It was a very tense and good scene. And the Rex doesn't overstay its welcome either. This is the only scene with the T-Rex in this film. They could have easily had the Rex show up at the end to fight the Distortus and be the hero again, which would have been stupid. But no, the creators of this movie used the Rex quite respectfully, which is in stark contrast to its use in the previous 3 Jurassic World movies. There are a couple other dinosaurs that make minor appearances in the film, but those are all the major players, with the exception of the 2 hybrids, which I'll discuss later because I have a lot to say about them. But on the topic of dinosaurs, I do have to discuss the complete and utter disrespect this film shows the Velociraptors. They appear very briefly in one single scene. This wanker, Xavier, wanders off to take a piss, and some velociraptors emerge from the foliage behind him, slowly stalking towards him as they prepare to ambush and kill this guy. Only for one of those stupid hybrids to appear out of nowhere and kill the velociraptors. Because, I guess, fuck the raptors. They're only one of the greatest species featured in this series. This really rubbed me the wrong way. The Velociraptors deserve much more respect, and after the Jurassic World trilogy misused this species, I was really hoping they could be redeemed here. Honestly, it's just disgraceful they get killed by a fucking hybrid. Ugh, whatever, let's move on. Now, the plot of this film is fine, I guess. I mean, the goal that our protagonists have and the reason they go to this dinosaur island is that they need to get DNA from living species, specifically from the largest species on land, air, and sea. This is because apparently their DNA can be used for medicine that could stop heart disease, and they need the DNA from the largest species because they apparently have the strongest hearts and the longest lifespans. Now, this reasoning I thought was a bit weak, and they don't really explain why they specifically need one from the land, one from the air, and one from the sea. I guess it's so they can have a variety of action set pieces. But whatever. It's a reason to get the characters on the island, so sure, let's just play along. Now, the mercenaries head off to this dinosaur island on their boat, but before they can get DNA from their first target, the Mosasaurus, they do answer a distress call and rescue this family that the Mosasaurus left stranded in the open ocean. And I think this is a very good decision to make. Like, this ends up dragging the family into this plot, which gives us characters who aren't there by choice, which I think really helped allow me to care more about the story and the characters. I mean, if the film just had a bunch of people who chose to go to this dangerous island in order to make money, I wouldn't really care or feel that invested. But by bringing in innocent bystanders, they add an extra level of investment to the characters, especially since they differentiate the mercenaries by having some of them care about the family and their well-being, whilst others don't give two fucks. Anyway, they get their Mosasaurus DNA, but then the Mosasaurus and a bunch of Spinosaurs attack the boat and they end up getting shipwrecked, losing a couple of the mercenaries in the process. And the family also gets separated from the mercenaries. At this stage, the mercenaries continue with their mission of collecting DNA, first heading inland to get the Titanosaurus DNA, before then heading after the Quetzalcoatlus. As I mentioned earlier, the Quetzalcoatlus attacks the group on a cliffside, and this was a really good scene. It also eats another of the mercenaries. Meanwhile, the family is just trying to make their way towards the village. They encounter some issues, including a T-Rex, but eventually both groups converge on the village and reunite. Now, this is where the movie decides it doesn't give a shit about dinosaurs anymore, and it has the hybrids take up the main role. And again, I'll talk more about them later. But to summarize the ending, basically the group gets attacked and separated for a bit, before they all manage to meet up and head to the coast to find a boat to escape the island. Meanwhile, Martin Krebs, the human antagonist of this film, steals a car to try and get to that boat first, but he ends up getting eaten, and then the rest of the characters escape on the boat. And then as they leave, Zora has to decide what she wants to do with the DNA they got, and she decides to go with Henry's idea of releasing it to everyone instead of selling it off to some company that will patent it. So, the end. There were some good characters in this film, but I think most of them were on the weaker side. Zora Bennett is a mercenary who goes on this mission to make money, before later having a change of heart, as mentioned in the plot summary. Now, she's kind and she seems to care about people, being one of the few mercenaries who wanted to answer the distress call. But there's really not too much going for her in this film. She was just a bit on the weaker side with limited characterization and flimsy motivation. Dr. Henry Loomis, on the other hand, was a character I liked much more. He's not a mercenary, but he was on their side. He's a civilian who worked at a museum, and he serves as the dinosaur expert in this film, being the character to identify species and their behaviors for the other characters. He seems really invested in getting the dinosaur DNA, but unlike the others who are in it for the money, Henry seems to genuinely just want to help other people. He was the one who suggested they give the DNA away rather than selling it off to some evil capitalist, and he risks his life to get that DNA. I love the scene where he sees the Titanosaurs and touches them. You can just tell how excited and amazed he is to be seeing living dinosaurs, and this is something that never gets old. Duncan Kincaid is without a doubt the best character in this film. He actually has a backstory that ties into his actions and motivation in this film, with him implied to feel guilty about the death of his child. This ties into his strong desire to protect the family that ends up getting drawn into this film. Duncan is the captain of the boat that the mercenaries take, and he's the one who ultimately makes the decision to answer the mayday and rescue the family. And after being separated from the family in the village, Duncan goes out of his way to try and get to them and keep them safe. Finally, in the end, Duncan makes the ultimate sacrifice and leads the Distortus away from the rest of the group, whilst they start the boat, allowing them to escape at the cost of his own life. Oh, wait, never mind, he's fine. He just teleported out of there. I guess he learnt that ability from the T-Rex. Martin Krebs is the human antagonist of this film, and he's the one who hires the mercenaries and sets off on this quest to get dinosaur DNA. And what can I say about Martin? Well, he's really boring. He just has no charisma, no interesting scenes. He's just boring and dull. His motivation is just to make money. And whilst that can work as a character motivation, without a charismatic personality or something unique to make them special, this motivation just isn't enough to make him an interesting character. I'm going to group these guys together just to make things a bit quicker. This is the family that gets drawn into the plot of this film. The father, Ruben, is a nice enough guy, and I like his dynamic with the others in his family. But he was kind of on the boring side. He has 2 daughters, Teresa and Isabella, and honestly, I didn't care too much for Teresa. She didn't have much interesting about her, but Isabella was cool. Of course, being a Jurassic film, they were going to include a child character. And I think Isabella was a pretty good child character. I love how she bonds with the Aqualops, which she names Dolores. And she opens the gate for the rest of the group towards the end of the film, which I thought was a nice touch, letting her do something to save the group. Xavier though, this guy was annoying. He's Teresa's boyfriend, and he's honestly an arsehole and a loser. I mean, he has his moments. He risks his life to save Teresa, and he has a decent heart-to-heart with Ruben. But this character was one I didn't really care for too much. I think he was meant to be comic relief, but he wasn't really funny. There's also a couple more mercenaries. Bobby Atwater, who's just an asshole who wants an excuse to shoot a dinosaur. Nina, who helped out on the boat. And Leclerc, who saved Henry and Zora by drawing the Quetzalcoatlus away from them. But these people were very much background characters, and they didn't get to do a lot before dying. Bobby and Nina are eaten by Spinosaurs, whilst Leclerc hangs around for a bit longer until he gets eaten by a Quetzalcoatlus. I think Leclerc should be given props for saving people right before his death, so it ended up being a sort of self-sacrifice type of thing, but he wasn't an important character by any means. Actually, speaking of character deaths, this film was a little light on the murder, and there weren't really any real surprises with who died and who lived. I mean, Bobby, Nina and Leclerc were not important characters and barely got any screen time or lines, so it was kind of obvious they were going to perish. They were expendable. Also, in Bobby's case, he was an arsehole, and you know audiences love to watch arseholes get killed. Aside from them, the only other character to actually die was Martin, and as the human antagonist, that's kind of to be expected. Jurassic Park antagonists have a habit of being eaten by dinosaurs. The problem here is that there aren't any character deaths that really make you feel anything. None of the important or likable characters die, and I feel like this was a mistake because there aren't as many stakes or consequences as a result. I mean, Duncan sacrificed himself at the end, but then he was just fine. There's no explanation given for how he escaped from the Distortus. He just does, which really undermines the impact of his sacrifice, because there is no sacrifice. There is no consequence to his decision, and this is very narratively unsatisfying. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm happy he's alive because he was the best character in the film, and if anyone deserved to get off this island alive, it was him. But from a narrative perspective, he really should have died there. I mean, remember when good characters would actually die in this series? In the original Jurassic Park film, Robert Muldoon and Ray Arnold were both good people who met unfortunate ends, and that really added to the stakes and consequences of that film. Or how about Eddie Carr in The Lost World? This guy was a fucking legend and he didn't deserve to die. He went all out trying to save Ian, Sarah and Nick in one of the greatest scenes in The Lost World. And after all the effort he puts in, he gets ripped apart by 2 Rexes. Absolutely brutal. Cruel even. One part of me hates that he died like that because he didn't deserve that fate. But his death was important because once again, it adds stakes and consequences to the film. The Jurassic series has been pretty bad about this lately, only really killing off bad guys and background characters of little importance. All the main characters are safe, and unfortunately Rebirth keeps this up. These good guys have too much plot armor. I mean, in Act 3 of this film, we have 2 main threats for our characters to deal with, the Distortus Rex and the Mutadons. Now, Distortus kills the bad guy, but apart from that, the only other kill it has in the entire film is in the opening. More on that later. I mean, yeah, it also eats the helicopter and kills the people in that, but they don't even really count as characters, to be honest. Okay, I guess the D-Rex has a high kill count, but it doesn't kill anyone important aside from the most boring Jurassic villain in the series. The Mutadons, on the other hand, don't kill anyone. Not a single character. How? How can you have one of your main threats in Act 3 not have killed a single character in the entire film? The main threat in Jurassic Park was the Velociraptors, and they had a kill count of 3. That was 60% of the humans killed in that film. The Lost World's main threat was the T-Rexes. They killed important characters like Eddie Carr and Peter Ludlow, as well as more minor characters like Carlos and Robert Burke. But yeah, Mutadons? No kills. What fucking losers. Now, what would I suggest to fix this? Well, I think Duncan should have actually died to the Distortus instead of teleporting to safety. And as for the Mutadons, they should have been allowed to kill a character off. Possibly Xavier, since he was pretty unimportant and you could have given him a good character moment with him saving one of the Delgado family members before dying. I think there's also an argument for letting Henry die. He was a good guy and I liked him. I don't really want him to die, but they did have a scene which would have been a good setup for him to die. After Leclerc draws away the Quetzalcoatlus, Henry falls off the cliff, and Zora is trying to save him by pulling the rope up. He keeps trying to reach over and grab the DNA vial though, something which is straining the rope and weakening it. So Zora tells him to leave it, explaining that the rope will snap. He ignores her and continues to go for the DNA. As expected, the rope snaps, though he does retrieve the DNA before he falls off the cliff, which he somehow survives. Honestly, it's a bit ridiculous. I think you could have had him die here and it could have given Zora some extra motivation and some interesting character growth for her if she decides to follow through with Henry's wishes to give the DNA away to the world, foregoing her paycheck for the greater good, after witnessing Henry give his own life for that very possibility. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. At the very least, he should have walked away from that fall severely injured. Oh god, is it time to talk about the hybrids? I really don't want to. Well, that's not true. I have very much a lot to say on this topic, but okay, let's just do this. Hybrids suck. They're not real dinosaurs. Nobody likes them. They should just use real dinosaur species instead. I mean, you could have just replaced the Mutadons in this film with Velociraptors and replaced the Distortus with some large carnivore. I guess the T-Rex would work, but personally I'd prefer something new, like maybe Carcharodontosaurus, for example. Anyway, let's talk about these fucking hybrids. I'm going to start with the Mutadons. They appear to be a hybrid between Velociraptors and some kind of pterosaur. Now these things are ugly looking, and as I mentioned earlier, they use these mutants to shit all over the Velociraptors. And despite being one of the main threats in Act 3, they don't get a single kill. So yeah, these things are lame, and they suck. I mean, Mutadon, really?
Gods, what a stupid name.
What's next? Hybridosaurus? I think Pteroraptor would have sounded cooler, even if that's also a cringe name. But at least it's less cringe than Mutadon. Unfortunately though, this movie didn't just give us one hybrid, it gave us 2! We also have the Distortus Rex, or D-Rex for short.
Who named you? Some half-wit with a stutter?
Now, in my previous video, I talked shit about the Indominus Rex and rated it an F tier. I didn't like its design because it was boring and uninspired. Then I saw this monstrosity, and honestly, it made me appreciate the Indominus so much more, because although the Indominus may be boring and uninspired, at least it doesn't look like this. I can't even think of something clever and insulting to say, it's just hideous. Why does it have a fucking melon on its head? Why does it have all of these limbs? Who approved this design? It doesn't even look anything like a dinosaur. I'm sorry, Indominus. I thought you were bad, but Rebirth proved things could be so much worse. So, hybrids. Yeah. These fucking filmmakers with their fucking smooth-ass brains are still putting hybrids in these films. Who wants this? Who wants this monstrosity in their Jurassic film? We come to this series for dinosaurs, not for this. Seriously, stop with the hybrids. We don't want them. Get them out of the series. There are quite a few silly little moments and scenes in this film that I did want to mention. Think of this as the miscellaneous nitpicks section. Now, I already mentioned this earlier, but the T-Rex fucking teleports after Teresa inflates the boat. 1 second it's sleeping in front of her, the next it literally vanishes. And this really took me out of the scene by just how ridiculous it was. Nina's death after the mercenaries get stranded on the island was pretty silly too. I mean, she somehow doesn't hear the Spinosaurus getting up, swimming into the water, and then emerging from said water to attack her. I can buy the Velociraptor sneaking up on Xavier because ambush is like their entire thing, but Spinosaurus is way bigger and it literally enters and then exits the water right behind her. The start of the film explains that dinosaurs have been dying off pretty much everywhere except around the equator and on isolated islands and shit, which seems like a really weird direction to take after setting up dinosaurs being in our world in the previous trilogy. But whatever, just kill them off I guess, who cares anymore. Also, I don't buy that people are now sick of dinosaurs. That's just ridiculous. There are so many people obsessed with dinosaurs in our real world, and they've been extinct for millions of years. You can bet your ass if they came back to life, people would give even more of a fuck. I don't at all buy that people are now so uninterested in them that this fucking museum about dinosaurs is literally about to go out of business. That's just stupid. Don't even get me started on the opening of this film. This thing was so ridiculous that I can't even make this shit up. Okay, so let me set the scene. At the start of the film, we see this laboratory where all the scientists are making the mutant dinos, and some of them are about to go head into the area where the Distortus Rex is. But something goes wrong and everyone has to evacuate, and this one unfortunate guy gets trapped in the enclosure with the Distortus and then eaten. Okay, now for any of you who haven't seen this film yet, I've got a little quiz for you. What caused the issue that resulted in this dude getting eaten and everyone evacuating the island? Is it A, a storm, B, a lazy maintenance worker, C, a random power outage, or D, this worker is eating a fucking Snickers bar and drops the wrapper on the ground, and then the wrapper gets sucked into the door as it's closing and causes the door to break? If you said D, you're correct. Also, what the actual fuck? This entire top secret facility gets evacuated because this dumbass drops a Snickers wrapper on the ground. What the fuck? But anyway, I could nitpick and rant about things all day. Let's just wrap the video up, hey? I spent a lot of time talking about things I didn't like or things I thought would have made this film better. But make no mistake, I do like this film. I'm a massive fan of this franchise and I enjoy each and every one of the films, even if most of them are flawed and can be quite irritating at times. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please consider doing all the normal YouTube things and let me know which one of the hybrids from this film you hated the most. They're each pretty terrible in their own way, so it's difficult to say which is worse. But anyway, that's going to be it for now. Catch you in the next video.